Hello, hello, welcome. Thank you guys for joining. I think this is one of the first times there's been people actually like totally ready. And that's my fault because I'm often like scheduling the streams, an hour before or something, and I haven't been consistent. If you've noticed, I've been trying to do around noon Eastern, but today I had to do 1 p.m. because we were told that we're going to have fire alarms in the building, and then they didn't do any of it. So I rescheduled the stream. It's very strange, very strange. And I've been sitting here waiting for this fire alarm to spook me because I'm pretty sensitive to like really loud noises or sudden loud noises. So I was kind of waiting for it, and I, like in a way, not anxiously, but just excited about it a bit. It's funny what I get excited about because I'm like, oh, I wonder how I'll handle it. Like that's what I was thinking. How am I going to handle this? Like, is it going to spook me? It's funny. I went to a Halloween or a haunted house once like that, trying to hold Christ consciousness or like a Christed presence in the Halloween or in the haunted house with people running all around. It was fun. It was hard to do. Hard not to get distracted out of like a presence, a peace presence. But anyway, so I am being a good boy, sort of. Sure. Always, right? Always doing my best. Although, if you're good all the time, then you don't make mistakes usually, and then you don't really learn. So there's sort of it's appropriate to go off the path sometimes, right? A little bit. That's how we learn most of our deeper lessons. So I like to healthily respect our own confusion as best we can. That's, I think, one of the reasons we're here, actually. And let's get back to basics. Most of us that are here now are here probably as a wave of volunteers, volunteer souls. Essentially, it's very simple. We're here to raise planetary vibration by anchoring higher frequencies of consciousness as much as we are able to do. It's really that simple. Some of us get like tapped by a galactic entity of some kind or angelic force or something. I kind of think it's all just galactic beings, to be honest, if I'm just being totally frank. I don't think there's much of a difference. I think it's all just ETs, basically. Galactic beings that we've deified in different ways and stuff too. But I think that's pretty much what all of it is. And so we're all of that. Like all of us are that too, basically. So let's get right to the beginning of Genesis, and what the Bible's trying to describe, sort of a little bit metaphysically, just like how it ties together of what we actually are, what it means when we say we're created in the image of God. What does that actually mean? In the perfect image of God. That's what we are. So in the beginning, right, the God created the heaven and the earth and all that stuff. And if you notice, it's 7 days, over 7 days. And on the seventh day, God rests. Where does God rest, right? God rests right in the crown here. The creation of the 7 bodies, there are more than 7 bodies, but the 7 bodies that constitute what we see here, primarily, start down at the red ray and move all the way up into the violet ray. Each day represents another density of consciousness, another aspect of our body, which is also the earth. So in the first day, the heaven and earth are formed, the elements, right? That type of thing. But that's what we are, is we're all of that formed into a being. That's also called the word placed in frame, or the logos, or the thought, the original thought. that original thought is in every piece of consciousness that exists. And so at our density of consciousness as human beings, we become self-aware. And then we now are moving past just self-awareness into all awareness type thing. We're moving into a collective awareness, a shared social memory complex where we connect to each other that way. And we see already more and more of that just being sort of obviously already happening, although the human instruments are typically unaware of their interconnectedness with all of the other consciousness entities that are forming the transmission. So things that are coming through this channel, for example, are going to resonate with other things that are going on in the universe in the same stream of or frequency of consciousness. And the instruments are usually like unaware, but if they encounter the other content, they'll feel it and go, oh, yeah, okay. I feel you, right? That type of thing. And then there are those types of things going on. But ultimately, the word is the first 7 syllables of creation. And it's interesting. This is something that's fairly new to my understanding. And it's the first 7 syllables are ka, ra, ya, sa, ta, ha, la. And, you know, it was funny because Master Ka, it sort of revealed to me why Master Ka chose that word, ka, which is also Egyptian for like spark of life or essentially spirit. And, you know, that word, ka, it spells Christ, basically. The first 5 represents the Son. The first 5 is the Christ. Now, it's actually pronounced and spelt Christ, like K-R-I-S-T. And then there's an H and an L at the end, like crystal, basically. So it's ka, ra, ya, sa, ta, ha, la is the word. That word combined in a harmonic or sound convergence is what is Om, basically. That's the full breadth of the word. But it also is Christ. And so it doesn't matter how we pronounce Christ, really. We're referring to the same thing. But that's the frequency of 5D consciousness, basically. Christ consciousness. That's what we are in our essence already. And so we're all here, essentially, all beings that are here to remember that. And the more we remember that, the more peaceful and present we become, the more centered, you know, the more unwavering we are in our own peace and just our, you know, our presence. And so the reason, though, that the volunteers are here to do that is because they already know how to do that sort of innately. They kind of get it quickly because they needed to quickly anchor in the new frequencies. And so a lot of the people have no idea really what they're doing. They're not researching spiritual anything. They're just literally running around holding down these power frequencies of Christ consciousness. Basically, they're just kind of living their best life in joy. And they're doing that. So they're just really kind-hearted people. And they're all over the place. I'm sure you can think of some people already in your life that are just like that. That's just like what they're anchoring all the time. So it doesn't have to look so mystical or meditative or Buddha-like or any of these depictions that we have in our mind about what it looks like to embody Christ. Like we can embody Christ consciousness while we're like driving our kids around in a boat or something, right? Or whatever. Like, so it doesn't have to look the way we've kind of conditioned ourselves to think it looks. You know, so our purpose then, though, as volunteers is because the earth was essentially prepared to do a pole shift in 2012, we needed to bump up the vibes so that essentially there would be enough consciousness power here to accept the frequencies from some of the galactic entities that wanted to aid in holding us without until the polar shift ends. When the stargates close through the harvest period, after the stargates close, this Earth is not going to probably like continue on in the fashion that it is. So the goal then is to essentially raise consciousness as much as possible to make the job of holding the Earth from doing the pole shift is essentially what's happening. And the opposing forces, negative forces, are attempting to shift the pole. So it's this sort of stalemate that we're in right now, and it's great, and it's going to continue. But it's essentially this stalemate of energy that is what allows the Earth to continue where it's at without having a major pole shift. Like the poles, and we'll notice the poles are probably moving a bit too. So there may be some type of gradual movement that's occurring, but it's not. It's causing, of course, planetary changes in the form of weather and other things, but it's also causing like this slow shifting. Anyway, as we hold that vibration, it allows those teams to, and this is kind of out there for a lot of people, so just bear with me. But hopefully you find it interesting, and it's good news, really. It's good news. Essentially Earth has like been a bit of a contested place for these things that are essentially stargates that connect the Earth into the vaster cosmos, and including the Andromeda galaxy, and other areas of the cosmos. And it's sort of like if you had a war going on and like there's a particular bridge, like back in the day, like they're doing a ground-based, it's a very important bridge. It's kind of like that. Like the Earth is like a really important bridge, sort of, is like a simplified way to look at it. So, and it's not even about what is on the Earth so much. It's about consuming the negative forces, attempting to consume aspects of the cosmos to gain that quantum energy so that it can continue to live. So I've talked about it before, but it's like an alligator or something. Like if you're in a river, the alligator is going to probably try to eat you. It's sort of like that. Like, so we don't actually fight against or hate these entities, because we get to a place where we realize that they're doing what's in their nature to do, which is to try to survive. They don't have the empathy stuff, and like their emotional body essentially has been crumbled off, fragmented and gone. So they don't understand or care really. They don't. They're just, I have to live, so I'm going to eat the universe. So these are massive beings that we're talking about, massive collective of beings, huge negative things that are just way beyond any comprehension we can really even have here as a human. And they're trying to literally eat galaxies, basically. It's so funny to think about it, honestly. It sounds like a sci-fi movie. And it kind of is. Like, that's what we're kind of living in. But we've been living in it for a long, long time. A long time. Billions and billions of years. This has been going on. And it's not like it's so much bigger than just our planet, but our planet has that importance to the tethering or the connectedness in the other galaxies that are like kind of connected in this chain almost of consciousness. And so our purpose then is really just to remember who we are, which is, I like to call it essentially a soul scavenger hunt. And so, like, even on the channel, I've talked a lot about meeting Ka and that experience, and then learning these various things, and then learning about like what Ka meant. Like, I didn't even know about any of the Egyptian stuff or any of this stuff at all until just recently, sort of. Never really understood any of these things, because one of the things we're doing is essentially seeking soul fragmentations, or remembering ourselves, remembering what we are. And some of it comes through like the physical world, like stumbling across certain writings, books, whatever it is. But some of it comes in through like intuition and other things. And then usually, like, if we don't really trust the intuition, like spirit sort of like throws it in our face again, like maybe manifest into the physical world to be like, see, what you had your intuition about was correct. See, in order for that to work, we have to kind of trust our intuition a bit, right? So it's building this relationship essentially with our inner self and our inner Christ, and building our relationship with God through this. And so we go on literally like these little sort of scavenger hunts to figure out what we want, what our soul feels calling to understand about itself. So for all of us, it's a little different. Mine seems to be about this Master Ka thing and these galactic things going on. That seems to be what calls me in the most. But it's important, before we get drawn into all of that stuff and before we get shown some of the things that are really going on, we need to be able to see them with a sense of peace. Like our guides and the entities that want to work with us in any form, in a positive sense, don't really want to disturb us. They basically want us to be centered before they start to share. Or, you know, and essentially that's what I realized that I had been doing prior to my big awakening, was preparing myself to not be polarized and judgmental. I wasn't judgmental of beings when I had my awakening. I knew just at that point I had come to wrestle with good and evil enough to notice that like everyone's just doing wacky stuff, and you know, it's who am I to judge it, and that type of thing. I had an open mind, I guess, which is what helped to enable my integration to go a little fast. Just because I was able to see a little more, I think, quicker than some people, just because of that orientation, I guess, is what I'm getting at. So having an open mind and being basically like, I couldn't possibly know. I couldn't possibly know is what really opens us up. But then also being centered in, I couldn't possibly know, but I do know that I'm protected and safe and at peace. Those types of things. But cultivating those presences is what opens us up to get more and more direct, clear, intuitive understanding from spirit. And if we're interested in like learning into or leaning into like these darker paradigms of consciousness and what's going on, we essentially like, we want to go in like eyes open to see, but we don't want to be freaked out. And honestly, if we go in to these areas and we're holding lots of fear, we tend to attract ourselves these weird negative encounters, which isn't a bad thing, but it helps us to establish fear, or establish our peace in the face of fear by having these encounters as well. Like essentially, we are walking towards and starting to call for a certain frequency of galactic understanding, perhaps, and we're afraid of it as well. So we have a chink in the armor, you could say, and we have an opportunity then to be manipulated in some way. So it's just something we want to try to approach responsibly, really. And there's something that's encoded in all transmissions, all thought transmissions of any kind, get stamped with what I call a light matrix. I've heard other people call it encryption. But we can start to sense the vibration of the light matrix that's behind whatever's being offered, basically, is a complicated way to say that we trust it in our hearts or not, right? It's that simple. But metaphysically, when a soul generates a creation, it stamps it with its energy and intention and love and whatever it's trying to put into that thing. right? And that's kind of the way to think about that. It stamps it with it. It doesn't. There's probably methods in like other in magical practice to sort of shield that or do something to make that different. But generally speaking, that would just be a different type of light matrix, right? Or a more constructed, pure or perfect one, a crystalline one that something's been very intentionally encrypted and put into that transmission. And so as humans, we do it with our eyes and our voice primarily, our eyes and our voice, and in written word as well, artwork and things like that. But yeah, so we I'm not sure why I got onto that tangent, but we're doing a soul scavenger hunt and trying to figure out what's going on with us, maybe where we're from, or where we resonate with in the stars. We're trying to like learn these different things we remember from different time periods, to help us like remember more of our infinite being. Essentially seeing these types of phenomenon, like realizing, oh, I'm not just this life. I've had all these other lives, and that type of stuff helps us to embrace the infinite. That's basically part of the process of being able to get the human on board with like what infinity could kind of mean, right? So that's part of that process, is sort of starting to just notice that I couldn't possibly be this, and that's it, right? But it can get kind of weird, right? So most of our galactic teams and entities and spirit guides and stuff, they basically will try to facilitate these things in ways that cause us as little disharmony as possible. But because there's sort of the fear or pain body part of us that's scared of certain things, like some of it we've decided to let go of, you could say. And so those are like okay areas for those entities to give us something that will cause us some fear. So usually those experiences are like, you know, stuff that gets sort of just oriented in a way to like make sure you encounter like a deep fear, that type of thing. So some of our friends, spirit guides, whatever we call them, can help with some of that, to help make sure things go kind of a certain way, to just help make sure that you're afraid enough to think you're experiencing something. And it's basically used only in like situations where the soul's like just kind of routinely looking away from something that it's meant to see, like that it's meant to see it. So the guides, they're operating with the soul's best interest in mind, which is like what the soul planned on seeing before it forgot itself a bit, right? It can see that. The guides can see that information by reading the crown summary. So they can see exactly what you're like really wanting in that way. And this is one of the ways that things happen. And like you'll have people sometimes say like just the perfect shitty thing. And a lot of times that's this type of thing happening, that they've agreed to be a shitty role for a moment. Hopefully it's a stranger and it's just weird, but it goes away. But I mean, people just do things. And then a lot of times afterwards, they won't remember what they said and stuff. It's interesting. So we start to get a sense of when, like almost like it seems like almost a divine intervention almost of some kind, where like the higher forms of consciousness, either fourth density negative or fourth density positive, is like directing that frame to do something. And you can start to get a sense of sometimes when that's happening, and if it's like a negative thing, or a positive thing, or how it's being manipulated. And you can see that there's a mechanic of it all serving you, because it's your fear that draws that experience in. And then that other entity comes to help essentially point at your fear, right? the other fourth density entity manipulates the one to come, to say something, whatever, right? So it's really interesting to notice that the separation or the seeming separation of these opposing forces are actually working in an entire tandem of harmony to grow, right? So then the negativity force is not seen then so much negative, really. It's trying to do its own thing, serve itself, but in doing so, it shows its cards, and it shows that it doesn't have any actual power over you by doing it. So every time you get encountered, psychic attacked, whatever it is, every time this happens, you stand strong in your peace of knowing that it doesn't have power over you. Eventually it stops because they're tired of regrouping. Like you'll end up essentially like just confusing them. They don't know what to possibly do to try to show power over you because you don't have these vulnerabilities really anymore. So that's kind of how it works. But the easiest way to notice that they don't have the power is to notice that they're actually helping you to see yourself better. They're actually cleaning your eyesight up, sort of, by their behaviors. They're helping us, really, to see. That's why I call them galactic friends. And, it's they help us with more catalyst, essentially. Perhaps more than we wanted or needed, perhaps. Or we feel that way, but I would say that the universe gives us precisely what we call for also. It's very like mathematical that way. Like it's interesting that everything is created, it's very mathematical and kind of perfect in that way. But then there's an element of chaos of life, right? And love, that's what love really gives, is chaos. Love's the force of chaos. If love on its own, it's just chaos, basically. That's why love distorted into chaos builds entropy of something, death of some kind, rage and attack and things, right? So I'm going to jump into the chat a little bit. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it. Hello, Dina. Hi, Mark. I'm being a good boy, yeah. Hi, Lizette. Thank you for tuning in from the beginning. That's awesome. And I think I said hi, Dina. Hi, Universal Spec. Hi, Dan. Yeah. I didn't want the stream. That's why I thought the alarm was going to go off during the stream. And I thought that would be weird. And I haven't been in this apartment for very long. I don't know what the test even entails. Apparently, it is a test of just our own patience, perhaps, because they didn't do anything. So, whatever. Hi, Jody. Oh, thank you for telling everyone to like the video. Yeah. I forget to ask for those things. I think I'm supposed to be better at YouTube. I've been doing it for a while, but I just don't really think of these things. Janaya says, confirmed a thought yesterday regarding stamp of approval. Oh, cool. That's great. I love when that happens, when we're consuming something that like we were just thinking about, and then we're like, yeah. I love that. It's one of my favorite things. And it happens to me so much because I have this skeptic in me that like really, really just stops listening to the mind. So I'm almost like I'm so distrusting of myself, of the little self or the mind, that like I almost always have to be prodded a few times by spirit for me to even listen, really. I've been told that it's like they refer to me sort of as like an ox, that I'm like they like have to push at me and push and push and push to get me to even like look at them or notice them, really. That's how they've described it to me. It's like I'm still like that. I'm so stubborn in my decision to ignore my own thoughts that I just ignore spirit a lot. This is my own struggles, I could say. But, it's kind of a running joke between me and Master Ka that I just sort of ignore them all the time. Kind of accidentally, like, it's like, that's what I'm trying to say is it's, you know, yeah. What up, Riverbank Psycho? Oh, hey, Chantel. I hope you're doing well. Hello, Theodora. Lovely to see you. Sarah T says, when you said you know you're safe and protected, does this include for you when you're being presented with information that our environment is contaminated and there's essentially no way to escape the infiltration? I go back and forth sometimes, but ultimately believe our light bodies take care of the shit not meant for us. And with the love in the heart, we have what we need to thrive. Yeah. Yeah. I guess for me, my attachment to the body has been like not as much as most people's. So that's been a blessing and a curse because I didn't take care of myself very well. But it also helped me in my awakening periods where I was having the same kind of discomfort around like what's here, because it's not just our, it's not just our food that's being poisoned and stuff. It's like literally our energy field is being poisoned, basically, which is why we die the way we do. It's also one of the reasons that we, there's some, it's essentially a disharmonious vibration. And that's why our instruments or our bodies are meant to last around 900 years. And that's sort of the proper configuration for this density of consciousness to live for 900 years. But now we don't, right, at all. Or generally, beings that don't awaken. And when we awaken, we start to use, instead of the I think it's called the Piscean, the circles. So instead of using two circles like this, we create a light body out of a large sphere and then like two smaller spheres, which allow these smaller spheres to pull into each other and generate a spark, which essentially fuels through its own energy. It's a living light body, so it doesn't deteriorate at all. Whereas the two circles that we use here in third density basically spin and spark, but eventually run out of stuff unless it's fed with source. But it essentially degrades because it's not able to generate its own energy. So the eternal parts of us are doing that spark that I talked about already. And one way to see that is sort of like the Holy Trinity, or sort of like it's a part of us that can do that. It's hard to describe it without like a bunch of charts, and I'm not good at making these charts. There are other teachers that talk about these things, probably, although I don't know who they are. I don't know where to direct anyone for this information. but yeah, so the essentially life here is gonna have to die, so to speak. And ascension happens when the gates open and we go through this harvest. And so we essentially worrying too much about like longevity of our body isn't necessarily beneficial to promoting like or working down the path that we're meant to go on. Like we're essentially meant to, as I understand it, this is where I've found peace with it, is like remembering the eternal being we are allows me to go, yes, I'm being poisoned. Yes, everything is poison around me, basically, right? Like pretty much in this modern world, almost everything around us is just poisoned, or part poison, even the water. And that's not even talking about the energy and the thoughts, the thought poison also. That's all there. But I've learned, I guess, for me, that the more I come back to but it doesn't affect me, it doesn't really have power over what I am, the less that seems to actually affect me. And so there are sometimes when like a lot of people are going through these really weird energy cycles, and I'm not feeling it quite as bad as they are. Like I'm kind of okay, unless it's a full moon or something. Then I'm just howling at it. But you know, actually, when it's a full moon, sometimes I have to like put my headphones on and just walk around and like just walk off all this energy that's coursing. And you know, I think it's a balancing act, really, of caring about, you know, I would say what we feel we can contribute change to, which is essentially, if we realize that the best thing probably I can do is realize Christ consciousness in myself, like, and continue to realize this constantly, probably that's the best thing that I can do, because as that happens, I become somewhat impervious to the environment in that way. We start to like have the infiltration attempt kind of fall off of our field. There's aspects of that like we aren't able to really fix, but I also believe that like it can all take care of itself. I think you said that. Yeah. Like it takes care of itself as our vibration goes up, basically, is how I've seen it. And even in myself, like as my vibration rose, I suddenly started losing weight, eating differently, and feeling better, generally better. You know, all of that stuff just comes along with the ascension or the raise in the vibration. How much it's still, these poison things are still affecting me, probably lots. I don't know. Probably a lot, I would imagine. Sarah says, yeah, it's a fine line between contrived ignorance and full-blown fear. Hard to find balance. Yeah. Contamination, EMFs, terrible food, water. Yeah, it's everything's terrible, basically. Yeah. That's one of the reasons that like I try to remind people sometimes that we basically are living in like a hell, you know, and we're meant to try to bring the light or heaven to hell. And we can do it. We can. Because heaven's within, then we establish this, you know, we become just unwavering in that. And you know, it sounds a lot like being rose-colored glasses or something. And I suppose it could appear that way. But it's more like we're not investing our energy into the matrix anymore, really, is what it is. Theodora says, it's a good thing none of this is real. Yeah. There's like a layer of reality here that is real, that gets expressed into what we see here as real. So it's sort of like a mirror, an inverse mirror. And part of our awakening process is to inverse ourselves again. We revert and look backwards, look in properly, and see our true self. And usually that confrontation is challenging. Sarah says, I asked in meditation to be shown how we source our own energy, and was shown the infinity symbol as a sort of spiritual technology, that the energy comes from our soul, but that is probably just working with the context I already had mentally. Yeah, the infinity symbol, that's a good way to see it, for sure. I think it's called Vesica Pisces. I think that's the word I was thinking of. Vesica Pisces is the thing I'm thinking of. Let me just search it up. Or is it Pisces? Vesica Pisces. Yeah. So Vesica Pisces. And it forms, it actually forms the sacred geometry, the seed of life. So I didn't know that, but that's what it is. Yeah. The infinity symbol with the intersecting here. So as it spins in the four corners, it sparks. But that gets sourced, and then as the entity becomes like sort of activates the fourth density Merkaba, or the light body, and starts to form into the light body, and all the DNA activates and all that stuff happens, then we have to start to become our own generator, essentially. And that's when we form the three, and they spark together, just through their own sort of polarity and magnetism. They just keep doing this infinitely. So it's interesting. It's interesting how it all occurs, but really, we're not going to notice much of a difference. But what we'll notice is that when we're recycling energy from others, like it doesn't sustain us, and when people are doing it to us, it weirds us out. Happy I Love You Day, 1:43 p.m. So we're going to notice that, like, I've talked about this a few times on the channel, but we'll notice that, like, when we're trying to get like energy from people, like, it makes us feel bad somehow. And a lot of the times we're doing it unconsciously, like we don't realize we're doing it. And it's not that it's a bad behavior. It's more that we're meant to source our own energy. We're learning that we are the energy generator through our connection with spirit and our soul, basically. That will source us for everything we need. So we become very naturally somewhat wanting to isolate a little bit, but still engage in some social stuff that feels right. So because we can still have really positive experiences with people and enjoy those. So there's nothing wrong with like enjoying good experiences, of course, right? That would be silly. It's only if we're like trying to source our value from that somehow, essentially. Thank you, Dina. Thank you. Sarah T says, it's not so much about worrying about longevity as it is having a fully functioning human form and being able to embody love that way. How unconditionally loving can we be if we're all jacked up? Yeah, no, I know. I think that's like the test here. That's the challenge, I think, here, that most wandering souls are like, they decided that it would be, from our purview before coming in here, most of us were like, easy, piece of cake, right? Sort of like a college or university student, like loading up on courses. Oh yeah, I'll take that one. You know, I'll just skip a couple grades. I don't need to do that. Like sort of like that, like just putting a lot on us. So yeah. And Sarah says, I think as we anchor into the higher dimension, we sort of float above the muck. Yeah. I've also noticed people around me getting swept up in worldly drama, and it just doesn't affect me. Example, pandemic. Yeah, exactly. That stuff didn't affect me really either. Other than like when I was traveling and stuff, I had to do stuff. I had to do things to like take tests and all that. But yeah, that stuff didn't matter to me. What it did help me with those, helped me see how kind of bananas people are. And I'm okay with them being excited or not excited about whatever they want, sort of, right? Sarah says, I see so many powerful people so focused on physically fighting the matrix, and I wonder if I'm confused or if they haven't gotten quite where they're going yet. I think the way to fight is to focus on love and own sovereignty and live the best life you can, but those people will say we are bypassing and turning against the fight. Yeah. Yeah. Um, exactly. If you know, I just kind of go back to Jesus a bit on that. Christ said, those who live by the sword die by the sword, and essentially, like, you don't fight. We don't need to fight, but we say no, right? So we stand. We stand strong, but we don't fight. Is how I see it. So we stand for truth and what is good and for love, peace. And if our life's taken from us, so be it. Then we will be, we will essentially be probably quite highly regarded, and as we leave, by the presences around us. Then they'll sort of be like, "Hey, that was a pretty good job. You didn't get mad at all. You were forgiving them the whole time. Good for you." Those types of things, right? They're sort of like rewarded after. This is the way I've seen it anyway. But I think, yeah, fighting it. Also, most of the humans that think that they can fight it are delusional, basically. Like the ones that think that they're like doing it. No, I don't think so. I think they're just delusional. The reason that humans are used is essentially more like anchors or instruments to accomplish some various things. Frequency anchors, generally. The grid workers are the closest thing I can think of to beings that actually are like helping with things. They're participating in their own way by essentially opening and managing these ley lines and things. That's all real stuff, and it all does help. But like I've seen people talking about some weird things, like, and then there are people that have sort of astral battles, and I'm not saying those things aren't happening. I'm just not sure that that's. I'm not sure that what they think they're doing is what they're doing. I think what they're doing is feeding a complex of energy that is not necessarily like it's kind of a weird thing going on with that stuff. Some of it, but there is truth that there is a battle happening too. And so there are also fourth density wanderers that are essentially here in part to kind of be wrapped up in that, probably. Like, probably they're wrapped up right in that stuff. Like, they can't see that the fight, they still see the need to fight, essentially. So they're doing probably exactly what they're supposed to do. And some of it is probably legitimate, but some of it is just weird people just sort of fantasizing about things too. And nothing wrong with that. They're still experiencing whatever they believe they're experiencing. So they're still getting their experience of whatever it is. That's how powerful the mind is, right? But that's why I tend to not talk too much about the crappy stuff that's going on, because it becomes apparent for everyone when they're ready. And there's enough people, I think, on the internet just talking about weird stuff. I reference it because I don't want to make it seem like I don't think it's there or something. I want people to be aware that it's stuff, it's there. But look at that. Tinder hot, whatever. That's funny. Universal Spec says, my autoimmune condition is going away as I rise in consciousness, in awareness, Sarah. Have faith and keep going, gets better. Yeah, I've heard a lot of stuff like that. That's great. That's awesome. I've heard a lot of stuff like that. I've had problems with like a whole bunch of different things. And it started to just kind of go away. But it also depends. We're all wired a little differently with our energies, right? Like how much we feel even of the body. Like our experience of the body is quite different from being to being to being, and our self-image as well, and where we relate that to the body and where we don't, and all of that stuff. So we have like kind of different things, I guess, that we hold on to. So for me, most of the things that I hold on to are like mental pillars or principles. And if I don't have those, then I don't know what the hell's going on. Whatever's going on to Sean, that's one thing. That's just a thing that's going on. So I'm kind of more about the mind, I guess, about my mind and heart. That I feel more like a spirit than I do a body. But I don't think that that's necessarily like better or anything. I don't think it matters really. But also I think that naturally we do, like, our body essentially starts to perfect itself as we essentially remember our perfection, is basically what happens. It's like a side effect. And so even if we're like, so the more attached we are to the body, the more of a reward that might feel like, basically. The more of a tangible change we might notice in ourselves that helps us feel inspired as well. Whereas for me, I had some changes, but none of those things really inspired anything in me. I was just sort of like, oh, it's a thing. And I would, like I said, I wouldn't say that my perspective on that is like better or anything. It's just the way I see it. And the attachments as well that we have, like, we're meant to keep a bunch of them, I think, to some degree, a little bit. Otherwise it gets weird, I think. Not attachments, that's not the right word. But our the things that like drive us kind of nuts some way, like we have to get it, or if we couldn't do it, I don't know how I'd live. Like, those things are worth our investigations. But it's a long process, so we shouldn't. Well, it doesn't have to be long. That's the other thing I should say. Actually, it doesn't have to be long. It can happen like in a moment, and then just that's it. Yeah, they won't stop until every entity is slayed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, there are some people that are just like basically playing in a imagination land. It's a thing. Things are happening there. It's real. And then there also is actual things happening that are similar. It's very, very interesting. Like, that's why when I was talking a while back about like me meeting the dragon and going into the basically going into the lower astral and stuff, that essentially is the subconscious, like, so when we go down there and it's not distinctly real the way I think people think it is, but it is real. So it's kind of confusing to talk about it. But when they have those experiences and then they're like, oh, they start to then talk about it like I am some type of warrior thing. I appreciate where the heart is in it. Like, I appreciate where they're coming from. But it reminds me of that funny show. It's called Peacemaker with John Cena. And he's like, I don't care how many men, women, and children have to die. I'm going to make peace. And it's just completely weird thoughts to me. Certainly a soul that's around the fourth density is going to feel so newly awakening third density souls. But most of the volunteers are fifth or sixth density, so they're kind of not going to get caught up in this as much. But the fourth density souls, or the brand more new third density souls waking into fourth, are going to have these experiences and can get like totally wrapped up in all of it, because essentially, like, they're not used to some of the horror, you could say, of what's going on in different ways. And so the need to fight it, the feeling of the injustice and all of that is just so strong that they get called up and into it all. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's a part of the evolution to like get drawn into this stuff. So it's some of them are participating in like their own creations, and then some of them are participating in the collective creations. And then there are, of course, other things going on all over the place. And it's way weirder than is really even possible that I can think of to describe it. There's so much going on. In galactic terms, there's so many different groups and things going on. It's so complicated, honestly. It's like, to try and comprehend it all is like a nightmare almost, for me anyway. So that's why I don't go there. I try to actually take that, the information that comes from sort of like the more cosmological scale of consciousness, and then bring it down into like practical, what does that mean for us as like beings? So like the complicated stuff, it's that I notice that's in the Akash or in downloads that I receive or whatever. If it's too complicated, I just don't really bother with it too much. I try to simplify it into something like a metaphor, a story, a parable or something. Or talk about it like, you'll notice on the channel that a lot of times I'm saying, it's kind of like a dump truck, and then it's got to do this. I make these little things because I think it's kind of better than like the really confusing stuff, personally. But there are certainly other people that go right in depth to all that stuff. It's available for essentially once one of these entities like utilizes an instrument here for something, we can all sort of pick up on it. It becomes essentially active as a memory, really, and in the Akash it becomes available, and it's in the consciousness sphere at that point. And because we're essentially on like what seems to be like a type of evacuation almost, like, but it's more like just a harvest, but it's we're being given information so openly by the galactic teams now. Like, it's so open. And you can usually just discern from the teachings themselves the piece about it all, because the teachings from the positive oriented beings are like just basically purely about developing the self into peace, really. Anything else is like not really that way. It's not necessarily positive. And through doing that, actually, our psychic stuff all opens up too. Opening up this way opens up also our psychic awareness. So some people try to open up their psychic awareness without opening up their center, really, or not being centered. So they become imbalanced. And so those souls are meant to learn that. Probably they are like adepts that are still working on their adepthood. A mystic of some kind, a mystic soul of some kind, needs to learn that they can't just burn out a chakra, like their third eye or something, like to try and just bolster their, as if it's some type of like, they just pick up a wrench, they have a new tool, so now they can suddenly open up all these things. but they don't know how to use the tool or something. Like they don't even know what it is really, and it's a part of them, right? It's not just like something they can just use to their whimsy. So the eye opens and then they start to see and they're like, oh my God. Oh my God. Then they go through psychosis generally. And I've experienced it. That's why I warn about it. It's really common to experience psychosis when we aren't properly prepared for what we're going to see and hear or whatever. Like we just get a little bit confused, a little panicked, a little spooked out, not sure what's real. And some of it is real and some of it's not, and some of it, so it's weird. It's a weird state to be in. Luckily I don't have that experience anymore, but that's why I talk about some of those practices. That's why I say that if like positive channels are claiming that this is what we do and that we do this breath work or something, I would caution against that. I would actually just focus on opening up the heart, and then let everything else more naturally develop, without paying even that much attention to it, but setting intentions to try and like give yourself little tests, little psychic tests and stuff is the best way to do it. Sarah says, when I was there, I just kept going inward and collapsing until I emerged. Yeah, and it didn't take terribly long. Yeah, that's interesting. I still go up or go down or however we want to understand that, but I still pop in and out of there just to see what's going on. If we decide that the universe is a friendly place, we'll use our technology, our scientific discoveries, and our natural resources to create tools and models for understanding the universe, because power and safety will come through. Yeah. One of three options that Einstein. Thank you, E. Yeah, exactly. If essentially the more we demonstrate like the truth of God, which is just peace, really love, the more we demonstrate that to people and get people on board with that train, people just stop getting interested in fighting with each other about stupid shit most of the time. Just opinions, really. Almost all of the stuff that people fight about is just like weird opinions. Like, and I'm talking even all the most severe things. It's just weird opinions of like people trying to be better than each other, and it's just weird. It's weird. It's all crazy. So if people can like go, oh, we don't have to do this, and we can be friendly, we can take a really big turn in the earth. Unfortunately, the earth will still have to die. We'll still have to move to the next earth, and I don't really know how that works exactly, but like the gates will close, and then the sun seems like it's not going to make it. So I'm not sure, but that's probably 200 years or so from now, which isn't that long away. But I don't think that it will have an effect on us the way that it seems like it would when we talk about it now. I think that it'll, like I said, that we're all essentially ascending at the end of these lives. Those who are ready to ascend will ascend, and those who, you may even do it midlife. And I don't, it is another planet, but it's like the same planet is the way I've seen it. Or we might move to a new version of it or something. There are different ways it's been presented, like the way I've seen it, and I don't know what it's all called or the timelines really, but then there's other people that have put out all this other different information, so I'm not really sure precisely, but I think that opening then the heart and basically maintaining that presence is the most important thing anyone can do. It also activates the cities. within you, which are like spiritual gifts. And those things, kind of like superpowers, but part of those are temptations to try to use these things to do weird stuff. So it's actually, so we, even as those open, we don't worry about those either. We still don't worry about them. Psychic abilities, whatever. I wouldn't recommend worrying about it too much. If it's kind of like, you can, like if you feel really called to go do whatever, I mean, by all means. I'm just saying, from what I've seen, that stuff doesn't actually really help us that much. What helps us is holding higher vibration, being able to see more in psychic awareness or whatever doesn't necessarily increase our vibration. It just makes us able to see a little better. It's like we have a clearer lens, but if we're looking around terrified, our vibration is low, right? So working on this instead of working on peace is like kind of counterintuitive to our evolution, I would say. So I'm not saying don't. I'm saying balance in all things is what I'm recommending. I advocate balance. So, you know, and I experimented once with like Moldavite and had some weird experiences, and just, I guess I was fine, but some people would not be fine. Some people would not be fine. So that's why I caution people. I wouldn't recommend working on chakras unless you're going to work on every single one of them with the same effort, all of them, to maintain balance. Otherwise you are playing with fire. Kundalini, right? The fire serpent itself, the dragon itself. I think that's about time for me to go. I have to go and call the bank, I think. Yeah. That's going to be so fun. What a joy. It's funny. It's funny. I like to try and like surprise people on the phone, like, or whatever, with just like telling them how amazing they did. And because probably everyone's pissy with them. So I like to try to do that. But all right. I appreciate all of your chats and everything. I'm sorry that I didn't get to everything. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate all of your faces. Have a beautiful, what day is it? Wednesday? Yeah, it's Wednesday. Have a beautiful Wednesday. And, you know, if it's not Wednesday anymore, then whatever day it is, I hope it's beautiful. And on the 7th day, make sure you get some rest. All right. Take care, everyone.